Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I haven't posted in a while because I've been so crazy busy with everything else, and it just seems like every week there's something that has prevented me from posting, but I finally got around to it, and today's episode is gonna be about common plant mistakes. So mistakes as a newbie, or even if you've had plants for a while, it's mistakes that people make and that I make even now. Well, hopefully not anymore, but yeah, so common new plant mistakes, new plant owner mistakes, just common plant mistakes that you can make. So let's get to it. So the first common mistake people make is with watering. So either over or under watering the plant. Not all plants have the same watering requirements. So for instance, like a prayer plant, this beautiful medallion that I have, it needs a little bit more water. You don't want to let it dry out ever, like not to totally bone dry. Same with this, Macariana that I have, also a prayer plant. You never want to let them dry out. They need to be watered more frequently. You always want to keep the soil moist but not wet. But as opposed to other plants like this pothos, for instance, you can let these dry out until they're basically bone dry, and they're very forgiving when it comes to watering. So that is one of the first mistakes people make. And I know that usually on the little tags when you buy a plant, it will say water like this or water like that, don't let dry out. Or, but sometimes those tags are kind of misleading, especially if you're a new plant owner. Sometimes it says water when dry. Well, when dry could mean a lot of things, right? Could mean, well, bone dry or just a little bit dry or what, right? So what I go by, like the rule I go by, is if you stick your finger into the pot up to like this knuckle about here, so that's like what, your first knuckle? I have planty nails, by the way. Look at this, check this out, guys. Awesome, hey? Anyways, but stick your finger in to about the first knuckle, and if it's dry, then it needs water. For plants that need to dry out between watering. That's a good rule of thumb, or rather finger, that I use. It's just a little trick that can help you to know when it's time to water, when it says to let dry between watering. Other plants like this pitcher plant up here, I don't know if you guys can see it, but here it is. It's a pitcher plant. It's a carnivorous plant, and it usually grows in like swampy tropical regions. So they actually need to stay moist all of the time. So the medium in there needs to be moist. I always mist it every day, and water it with distilled water or bottled water because they're really sensitive to tap water and stuff. So that's another thing. You can't treat all plants the same when it comes to watering. So that is one of the main mistakes that people make. The most common mistake, I would say, is water, and knowing when to water and not to overwater and not to underwater. So talking about overwatering, here's another thing. Overwatering can lead to root rot, pests. It can lead to all sorts of bad things. So you don't want to overwater either. This is a common mistake people make when when they're new to plants. They think, oh no, I don't want to kill this plant, so I'm just gonna water it all the time. And you know, when you have plants outside, it's a lot different. Outside, if they're in the soil, you can water every day. It's just gonna run out through the soil at the bottom, right? So it's not gonna really get overwatered, most likely. Also outside, they usually have drainage if you have it in a pot, so it will just run out, the excess water will just run out, and you won't have to worry about it. But indoors, you can't water the same as you would outdoors. So indoor plants, you have to water a little bit differently. So don't soak, like generally speaking, most plants don't want to be sitting in water. They don't want their roots sitting in water constantly. There are some exceptions. There are some plants that like that. So yeah, underwatering, overwatering, one of the most common mistakes. So in order to prevent that, just look it up. This is what I do. I go on Google and I look up how to water this and this plant, or water requirements for this plant. And just really do your research. Don't always just look at the tag that it comes with. Don't treat all plants the same. Just do your research on it, and then you can water them correctly. And the second most common mistake is lighting requirements. So not all plants will have the same lighting requirements. There are some plants that are low light plants, and that's a whole nother thing we'll talk about in another video, the whole low light plants. But there are definitely plants that require less light than others. There are no real true low light, like put in a dark corner plants. All plants need light, but there are definitely plants that need less light than others. So for instance, again, like the prayer plants that I showed you earlier, these they're generally a lower light plant, so you can put these kind of more in an area where they're not getting direct sunlight. If you put this in a window, like in a south facing window, even east facing, if it gets direct sun onto these leaves, they will burn. This plant will not do well in direct light. It needs filtered light, a lower light, basically. And then compared to other plants, like this big bird of paradise here, this big bird of paradise, as you can see, it wants bright light. I have it right in the window. You can put it. I put it outside in the summer, and it does fine with like direct, like full bright sun. Same with this pitcher plant. In order to make pitchers on it, those are the things that catch the insects. They get little pitchers. This one doesn't have. Well, it has one right now, but I can't show it to you because it's all the way up there, and I have to get a ladder to get to it. But there's one pitcher on it. But in order to form pitchers, it actually needs bright light. So lighting requirements differ for all sorts of plants. So don't just put your plant in a spot where it looks nice. I mean, yes, do that too, but you want to make sure that the plant has the light that it requires in order to thrive and be healthy and happy. Again, this is something you can research online, or usually on the tag it says it, but it's a little bit misleading sometimes, again, because they'll say low light or medium light. Well, what is medium light, right? Like it could mean lots of things to different people. And our eyes, the lenses in our eyes are so good that they focus to light that we don't really perceive how bright light is. But plants are very sensitive to that because they photosynthesize. Photosynthesize. That's a hard word. So obviously they're very sensitive to light. And yeah, so that is mistake number 2 is light. Don't treat all plants the same. Don't just put them anywhere you want. Put them in a correct spot, research it, and you'll have healthy, thriving plants. Okay, mistake number 3 I want to talk about, and I should have talked about this right after water, but I wanted to talk about the light first. But mistake number 3 is no drainage in pots. This is a biggie. You always want to make sure that your pots have drainage, which what this means is your pot where the plant is in, usually a plastic nursery pot or any kind of plastic or terracotta pot that you want to put it in, has a hole in the bottom, and then you put that pot into another decorative pot. And so what this does is when you water, it doesn't trap all the water inside the pot. So usually what I do to water my plants is I hold them over the sink, and I take it out of the decorative pot and I hold it over the sink and I water it like that, and then let all the water drain out the bottom and then put it back into the decorative pot after. Because again, plants do not generally like to sit in water. They don't like their roots sitting in water for long extended periods of time. To make things easier, what I do with my prayer plants, for instance, I put them all in the bathtub. I take them all out of the decorative pots and in their plastic pots, put them in a bathtub, and then take the shower head and I just water them all with a shower and let everything drain out. And when they're done draining, I put them all back into the decorative pots and then place them back where I have them displayed. So basically, yes, that's one thing. Make sure the pots have drainage. I know there are some plants that are not as sensitive to that, so you could have no drainage, but then you have to really be careful how often you water. You have to be really careful that you don't overwater them, basically. So if you have a plant in a pot that doesn't have drainage, it doesn't mean that it's going to die. You just have to be a little bit more careful. So you might have to kind of cut back on watering as often as you would if it did have drainage in the bottom. Yeah. So, but the best thing to do is just to have drainage. So yeah, that's mistake number 3, I would say. Another common mistake that people make is repotting the plants too early or too often. So let's say you just get a plant and it's beautiful, you get it home from the store. People have a tendency to right away want to repot them and put them in a new pot and a bigger pot and then put them in their window or whatever. And you do not need to do that. If you get the plant from the store, it most likely just came freshly repotted from the nursery. And really, honestly, most of my plants I don't even repot after 1 or 2 years after I bought them, because and they're totally fine because they don't need it unless the plant is totally root bound in there. And some plants like to be root bound, so you know, that's a whole other thing. I'll talk about that another time. But yeah, unless you see that the plant isn't doing well anymore, like sometimes you know that a plant needs to be repotted when all of a sudden it's not growing anymore. Maybe some of the leaves are getting yellow. Like I have this one, I'll show you. Um, I have this big ficus. It doesn't even fit in, but it's in a tiny pot right now. As you can see, it's way too small for it. And he's showing me that he wants to be repotted because look, yeah, there's a yellow leaf coming, and you can see kind of up top here where the new growth is starting that it's kind of struggling a little bit. It's not growing as good as it used to, and it's actually, I've noticed that it hasn't been growing as fast as it used to. So I know this plant is telling me right now it wants to be repotted soon. So now I know that I'm gonna do that. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, so yes, that's another common mistake: repotting too often and too early. Too often is the same thing. So like I said before, don't just repot them. Oh, I repot my plants every year in spring. You don't need to do that. Just listen to your plants, look at them, examine them. If they look like they're not doing well anymore, if they look like they're kind of like, you know, not not thriving anymore, basically, they'll give you little symbols, little signs that they need to be repotted. And sometimes you can kind of look with your finger or a spoon, kind of look, see how compacted the soil is. Sometimes if the soil gets really hard and compacted, then repot it, because it no longer can hold on to any nutrients or moisture, and it's just gonna go right through. Or sometimes the soil gets so compacted that the water just gets trapped in there, and that's not good. Then you need to repot it. But yeah, don't repot too often, and don't repot plants right after getting them home from the store, unless you feel like they're in like a tiny little pot and it's not doing too good. So yeah, that's another common mistake. Another common mistake is humidity in the air. So like ambient humidity. And that doesn't mean misting. Misting increases humidity for the time being, like just for that moment. But I mean ambient humidity all day long, all night long. Most plants that we keep as houseplants are tropical plants, which means they grow, they live in very humid environments naturally. So usually 60% humidity, 80% humidity, even 100% humidity, like in rainforests, for instance. You know, a lot of the plants that we have grow in rainforest type environments. So usually our homes are not going to be 60% humidity, because that would be crazy. We would have all sorts of mold problems. But in order to keep the plants happy and healthy and kind of you know, make sure that they don't die, we need to kind of have the humidity up a little bit. And this is why I have humidifiers in our house. And I don't know if I can even lift this thing, but I'll show it to you. This is a big one, big humidifier that I have. I don't have it on right now because it's really loud. But all winter long, I have this running in our dining room, and I have one upstairs in the bedroom as well. And it drives Kirk crazy because it sounds like you're sleeping with an airplane engine. But in the winter, it gets so dry here in Winnipeg that I need to have those to keep my plants happy, especially plants like orchids. You know, they have what are called aerial roots, or these roots, as you can see, they're right here. This plant, you can't see it as good as some other orchids that I have. Let me see if I can find one that has good ones. I'll show you this one. Yeah, here's a good one. See, they can actually get humidity from these aerial roots, just from the air. So yeah, humidity in the air is a big one for certain plants. Not all plants need the same humidity. Some of them are fine with just regular, 10%, 20%. They're not going to die. But a lot of tropical plants need tons of humidity. Research it. I know you're not going to be able to totally, completely recreate a rainforest environment in your house unless you have a greenhouse, which if you do, I'm jealous. I wish I had that, but maybe one day. But yes, so humidity in the air, get humidifiers. Another way to get humidity into the air, if you don't have a humidifier or can't handle the noise all day long, all night long, is making pebble trays. So basically what you do is you take a terracotta or tray or plate or whatever, you fill it with pebbles, rocks, and you fill this with water. And then you sit the plant on top of that. And what it does is the moisture will evaporate slowly around the plant and create an environment of humidity around that plant. So that's a really good trick to use for humidity. You can leave cups of water places or pebble trays in between plants if you want to raise the humidity in between more plants. You can do that. Also, certain plants take it into the bathroom maybe. In the winter, you might want to move them into the bathroom where it's more humid. So every time you take a shower, they get humidity. And in the summer, usually the humidity is fine, right? Well, here in Winnipeg, which is in Canada, for everybody watching from somewhere else, our winters are really, really cold here. And thus the air gets really, really dry. And I know in our house, we live in an old house, it's a 110-year-old house, and the humidity will actually get so bad. If I don't have humidifiers going, the humidity will not even register on my hygrometer. Like I have a hygrometer here, and so you can see, I don't know if you see it right now, it's only at 26% because I didn't have the humidifier going for a while because I'm filming and it would be too loud. But usually with this humidifier that I have running, I can usually get it up to 40% in here, and that's really good. But when it gets to like minus 20, minus 30 outside, the humidity does not budge past 10% in here. No matter what I do, I can run the humidifier all day long. Yeah. So anyways, humidity. Ambient humidity is really important for tropical plants, more so than some more so than others. But yeah, have a humidifier, have pebble trays. If you want to misting is good. It doesn't hurt unless you don't have enough air circulation. Sometimes misting is a problem because it can create mold. So if you do mist daily, make sure your plants are not too close together. You make sure there's some air circulation going on so that you don't create mold. With some of my plants, what I do to raise the humidity is I actually have a bigger overpot and then a smaller underpot, like a plastic pot, and then I put in the bottom of the overpot, the decorative overpot, I will put like something to raise the underpot up off the bottom of the overpot, and then I sit the pot that the plant is in on top of that, and then when you water, the excess water drains through the underpot into the decorative overpot, and that will actually create moisture. Like the water will be in the overpot on the bottom, and that will create moisture around that plant. So it's a, kind of the same idea as the pebble tray, but sometimes it's just not conducive, or you just can't have a pebble tray under every plant, right? And especially if you have 3 cats, especially if you have a Millie cat. Millie is one of our cats' names, and she's crazy. So yeah, I can't have pebble trays because she will just knock all of them over. She'll just go pebble by pebble until they're all gone. Anyways, yeah. So those are a couple tricks for raising the humidity, but I think the humidifier is the best option. Another common mistake is not having enough air circulation around the plants. And I already kind of mentioned that when I was talking about the misting, but that's in general as well. Don't space your plants too tightly together. Like, don't clump them together, or sometimes people put plants in terrariums, which can work for some plants, but most of the time there's just not enough air circulation in there, and that will create mold. It can create fungus. It's just not a good idea. So you want to make sure that you space plants kind of further apart. You can cluster them for sure. Like, I have lots of plants that are clustered, like as you can see. But if you do that, then you want to make sure that there's air circulating through that. So in my case here, there's a heat vent right here, and there's always air going because I have the humidifier going and all of that. So it's not a problem. Some people run a fan. Let's say you have plants, you don't have a lot of room, and you have lots of plants in the same window, really tightly together. Some people will run a fan so that there's always a little bit of air circulation going there. So yeah, that's another mistake that you can prevent by having a fan and not spacing them too closely together. And another mistake, and I don't know if this is a common mistake, but another mistake is temperature. Too cold or too hot. Most likely it's, well, where I live, it would be too cold. I mean, generally houseplants, they can go up to like 10 degrees Celsius. Any lower than that, they'll kind of start to suffer a little. But I don't think any of us keep our houses below 10 degrees Celsius. You know, that'd be crazy. So it's not that much of a worry unless you have them right up against the window. Depending on your windows, if you live in an old house like me, our windows are old windows, so sometimes it gets a little cold, a little drafty by the windows. So you want to make sure that in the winter, to keep them away from any kind of drafts, any kind of drafty windows, or even like doors, you know, to the outside, outside doors opening and closing. If a plant is situated near that, they can really suffer from the doors opening. So temperature is a big one. Most people don't really make that mistake because it's kind of you know, common sense, but it's something to consider. Sometimes you wouldn't think about it, right? Like you wouldn't think that your window might be drafty unless, you know, sometimes you put your hand there like, whoa, that actually lets in a lot of cold. So in the winter, actually, I move, like in a cold winter, I actually move some of my plants back from the windows a little bit further in towards the house so that they don't get a draft. And also too hot. Too hot is another thing. Like, let's say you have a really, like a south facing window where it gets really, really hot in the summer. The plants can burn. Or in a sunroom that's not insulated, for instance, it can get pretty hot in there, and plants can start to wilt pretty quickly. Even if you water them, if it's really, really hot, they can really suffer. So yeah, temperature is another thing to consider. Another thing to consider is fertilizer. And I just recently started fertilizing my plants. I actually never fertilized before. And so I don't think this is really a mistake per se. You can totally not fertilize your plants and just repot them once in a while, and most likely your plants will do fine. Mine always did. I would never fertilize my plants before. I would just repot them once every 2 to 3 years or so, and the fresh soil usually has fertilizer in it, so that always worked for me. So it's not really a mistake, but recently I've been experimenting with fertilization and fertilization. That sounds weird. Fertilizing, and I've I found it's actually kind of making a little bit of difference so far. So I'm gonna keep doing it for a little while and see what I think about it. So yeah, if you want to fertilize, research what the plant needs. Some plants need different fertilizer than others. I talked about my orchids before, and I have been using orchid fertilizer for my orchids for a while now, and I have found that it actually has made a big difference if I fertilize them. So they have been blooming like crazy over and over. So that has been a success with my orchids. So we'll see about my other plants. So yeah, if you want to fertilize, make sure you look up what the plants need, what kind of fertilizer. There's different ones for flowering plants versus leafy plants. Some plants are a little bit, they don't like as much fertilizer, they're sensitive to fertilizer, and others you can feed as much as you want. So look it up online. Again, Google's your friend. That's what I use. But yeah, so again, it's not necessarily a mistake, but it's something to think about. And the last mistake I want to talk about is a pretty important one, and one I've been guilty of doing, and that is not noticing or ignoring pests when you do have them. And this is it's a big one, and sometimes it's not so easy to see them, and you might not notice right away. So it's important to always look at your plants, inspect them every week when you're watering. Look at the leaves, look at the undersides. Make sure there's nothing going on. Some pests like spider mites, you won't necessarily notice them right away because they're tiny, and it takes a while for an infestation to form, so you might not notice it right away. So it's really important to catch them early, so that you can take care of it, because sometimes with a pest infestation it can spread really quick to all your other plants, and then you have to take care of all of that. And sometimes it's a losing battle. I've lost plants to spider mites. I've lost plants to mealybugs, which is a big one. Like I said, I've been guilty of this before, where I just think, oh, maybe they'll be okay, or I'll put them out soon and they'll die or whatever, like the pests. But no, deal with it right away. Trust me. You want to isolate the plant right away from all of the plants. Like as soon as you notice a pest, spider mites, mealybugs, scale, uh, whatever, just isolate the plant away from the other plants, treat it right away, then inspect all your other plants for the same thing, um, and make sure you deal with it, treat the pest right away. So that's a major one. I left it for last because it's not something that usually happens, but once in a while you pick up a pest somewhere. It might come out of soil, some houseplant soil that you buy. It just has eggs of spider mites or whatever in it, and then somehow you get them, and then you might not even know that you have them. So always check, always make sure. Yeah, so that's the last thing I wanted to talk about. So I hope this helps. And if you have anything to add or any questions, just leave it in the comments. If you have a suggestion as to what I should talk about in one of my other videos, let me know, please. I'm totally open to that, and I'm excited to hear what you guys think and what you guys want to know about. Hopefully I can help you with it. So if you like my videos, please subscribe and like and all that good stuff. And so thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye!